I'm Ken Steele. In this episode, we'll finally explain the concept of brand chemistry as it applies to higher education marketing. We'll also consider some implications of increasingly sleep-deprived students and increasingly contingent faculty. Let's take 10 and take stock. There's a venerable tradition of pulling all-nighters as an undergraduate, cramming for finals or writing that term paper on deadline, fueled by candy bars and energy drinks. According to the UK's Guardian, the percentage of undergraduates reporting sleeping problems has almost tripled since 1978, reaching almost 71%. An average student in 1969 got 7.5 hours of sleep each night. 20 years later, that had decreased to 6.5 hours. There may be a number of factors driving this increase in student insomnia. Most college dorms have stopped enforcing curfew. More students are commuting to campus than ever before, and more than half are juggling schoolwork and paid employment. We also know that Canadian students are averaging at least 10 hours a week on social media, often postponing their sleep in order to do so. Class schedules have been extended into the early morning and late night by institutions trying to maximize their classroom inventory. Study after study has found that young adults require more sleep than their teachers, and their circadian rhythms push that sleep later. The Centre for Sleep and Circadian Neuroscience at Oxford University is conducting a major study this year of 32,000 students at 100 grade schools across England. Every indication is that a 1 hour later start to classes in the morning will result in a substantial increase in standardized test scores. Whatever the causes, sleep deprivation is an epidemic on campus. In spring 2013, 38,000 students at 34 Canadian colleges and universities completed the National College Health Assessment Survey. The majority reported that they woke up feeling rested fewer than 3 days a week, and 10% never felt rested at all. The problem isn't simply that students can't make it through a boring lecture. Sleep deprivation impairs cognitive function and impedes memory. A nap improves recall and creativity. Studies have found that higher GPAs correlate with better sleep. And given that sleep deprivation can lead to anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, it may be one key driver of the student mental health crisis on our campuses as well. Colleges and universities are starting to take a proactive stance to address sleep deprivation among their students. The Student Union at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor installed napping stations in their 24-hour campus library. St. Leo University in Florida is one of many that has installed $10,000 energy pods like those you'll see in many airports. Headphones block out noise, and a combination of soothing music and an LED light display is designed to bring on sleep quickly.
Every couple of days, 22-year-old university student Abby Freestone comes here, puts her feet up and has a power nap.
Mentally, I really feel like it refreshes the mind and I'm able to concentrate a lot better in my classes and things like that.
Nap time isn't just for kindergarten. Major employers like Google, Procter & Gamble, Goldman Sachs, and the Huffington Post are encouraging employees to nap on the job. In 2013, a much publicized study from the Harvard Medical School estimated that sleep-deprived employees cost American employers more than $63 billion a year in lost productivity. The Centers for Disease Control report that 30% of civilian workers get fewer than 6 hours of sleep, and among night shift workers, it can be as much as 70%. One of the best rested professions is educators. Just because you get a solid sleep most nights, don't assume your students do. Okay, so why am I talking to you about higher ed branding in a white lab coat? We have a proprietary approach to brand strategy we call brand chemistry. When I started studying perceptions of college and university brands about 20 years ago, I accepted the one-dimensional model of reputational rankings. We could measure perceived reputations for academic quality, and they were reasonably consistent over time. In Canada, university applicants perceived a top tier or two of institutions, a bottom rung, and the rest were spread somewhere in between. The size, age, and research intensity of the institution pretty much determined its reputation, with a few interesting exceptions. But the one-dimensional model really didn't provide much useful insight for brand strategy. Next, we developed a two-dimensional model that compared reputation for academic quality with reputation for student experience. Applicants generally rated institutions similarly on both axes, although there were a few interesting outliers. Working with this matrix for a few years and analyzing dozens of other perceived strengths and weaknesses led me to postulate a system of 5 quadrants. Yes, I know. Institutions strong on academics and student experience seem to be elite, research-intensive institutions with a long history. Those stronger on academics than the experience were typically commuter schools, attractive for their outcomes, research, employment prospects, etc. Students attracted to outcome schools were focused on the credential, not the residential experience. Schools perceived as stronger on student experience than academics were either strong campus schools, what the students might call party schools, or small, supportive, nurturing schools. And finally, schools perceived as somewhat weak on both axes, commodity schools, were attractive to students primarily because they were close to home or affordable. This institutional positioning framework helped in brand consulting, but we kept running into one major hurdle. Clients inevitably wanted to sit in more than one quadrant. Even sitting on the line between two adjacent quadrants didn't seem to quite do justice to the complexity of their institutions. I had to admit that institutional brand identities were more varied than the 5-quadrant model would suggest. Looking at top-of-mind word associations, it was clear that students, faculty, parents, and the general public came up with a range of words to describe an institution. People thought of institutions as rigorous or easy, boring, or party schools, much as the two-dimensional model had suggested. But schools were also perceived as large or small. They were traditional or modern, expensive or affordable, near or far away. They were associated with specific program areas, often professional schools, or with particular sports teams. Institutional brands are comprised of a number of key elements, many of which are shared with other institutions. What makes them unique brands is the way those elements are combined, much as chemical elements combine to create distinctive compounds. The fundamental elements that contribute to a college or university brand are finite in number, and we're still developing the full table of brand elements. The brand chemistry approach begins by analyzing an institution's brand to determine what elements are present and in what quantities. The way the elements are fused, the core focus, and a constellation of associated elements are what ultimately creates a distinctive brand formula for any college or university. The brand chemistry model, which is proprietary to Eduvation, is an intuitive and efficient way to convey an institution's brand identity to internal stakeholders. In this podcast, we'll be returning to the brand chemistry lab whenever we want to analyze marketing campaigns or brand strategies for colleges and universities. When we have time, we'll look at how the brand chemistry model can be used to synthesize the optimal brand formula for an institution. Stay tuned. College and university budgets are under increasing pressure. Most institutions in Canada need to enroll more students with fewer resources, while cost of living increases continue to drive up the single largest component of their budget: labor. For decades, the solution was massification. Larger and larger class sizes and steadily increasing student-faculty ratios. Once you have more than 1,000 students in a lecture hall, what next? For the past decade or so, the solution has been decidedly low-tech. Create an underclass of part-time, contract, underpaid instructors without benefits, pension, tenure, or office space. In the US, part-time adjunct professors are the new faculty majority. Last February, PBS NewsHour brought national attention to the plight of contingent faculty. Here's an excerpt.
Life in academia turns out to be different than what French professor and single mother Nicole Beth Wallenbrock had in mind.
I've been on food stamps for, I think, about 6 months.
Since graduating in 2012, she's worked part-time and is now teaching just 2 courses at the City University of New York, making $2,800 a class, though she's more highly rated than almost all of her peers.
The adjunctification of higher education is having an impact on student experience and learning outcomes as well.
More than 70% of America's college teachers are so-called contingent. Many are unavailable to their myriad students, given their necessarily shorter office hours, says longtime adjunct Joe Frachone, less energy in the classroom, fewer comments when grading papers or tests.
You can race through them, but to give meaningful, concrete, detailed feedback that a lot of these students need, it's virtually impossible.
In the past few years, American campuses have been rocked by student protests and unionization of contingent faculty.
What's outrageous? Adjunct wages!
Students and faculty across the country are now rallying for higher adjunct pay and the right to unionize.
Adjuncts are the lowest paid people on campus. They get paid less than the folks who come in at night to clean the classrooms.
There's something seriously wrong when PhDs have to join fast food workers on the picket line to fight for a $15 minimum wage. As always, there are no national statistics for Canada. I don't really think universities want to see it collected. A recent report from the Higher Education Quality Council of Ontario tracked the growth of contingent faculty at several Ontario universities. It's pretty easy to see the economic attraction of increasing the use of contingent faculty. A full-time professor teaching 4 courses will cost a Canadian university somewhere between $80,000 and $150,000. An adjunct professor gets on average $7,000 per course. So at just $28,000, the university saves as much as 80%. Last fall, the Wilfrid Laurier University Faculty Association reported that 52% of undergraduate courses were being taught by contingent faculty, who collectively accounted for 4% of the institution's total budget. To further dehumanize the position of adjunct faculty, some colleges are actually starting to outsource them. 6 community colleges in Michigan have saved themselves millions in retirement contributions and employ up to 84% of their faculty as adjuncts. This spring, sessional instructors went on strike at York University. An op-ed in the Globe and Mail asserted that academia is feasting on its young. The issue is that universities are flooding the market with increasing numbers of PhD grads, while teaching positions have remained virtually stagnant for 30 years. Cynics suggest this is a handy way for universities to ensure there's always a surplus of PhDs and to drive down the cost of labor. The official response from universities is PhDs should know better.
Nobody forces someone to become an adjunct. It is a very difficult way to make a full-time living. People who get PhDs owe it to themselves to think long and hard about the labor market that they're entering.
Something is seriously wrong when online essay mills pay academics 4 times as much to write the essays for cheating students as universities pay to have them graded. Some adjuncts are even creating their own platforms to cut out the university middleman, like Oplerno in Vermont. CEO Robert Skiff says that phenomenal professors earning poverty wages is a misallocation of capital. His open learning platform, Oplerno, charges students $500 to $1,500 per course, and instructors keep 80 to 90% of that tuition. This could be as much as $33,000 per course. It hardly seems ethical to pay senior faculty 6-figure salaries with no mandatory retirement, while a whole generation of academics gets left behind. Once again, we are out of time. Thanks for taking 10 with me. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Eduvation channel on YouTube or to the 10 with Ken podcast on iTunes. Please rate us, particularly if you like what we're doing, and we welcome your comments or suggestions. For exclusive early access to upcoming episodes, please subscribe to my free email newsletter, The Eduvation Loop. I hope to see you next time.